This shows the local residence strategy used by notably ISIS, Hamas, and other terrorist groups, as well as Hezbollah. It shows to what extent Hezbollah and Iran are using local residents and houses and interweave themselves inside civilian population in order to use this infrastructure to launch attacks. It shows how they don't only use military bases, they use civilian population as human shields. And as you can see in those really astonishing videos, is how Hezbollah has planted missiles in living rooms, in basements. Not only that, according to the IDF spokesperson, trucks loaded with missiles ready to be launched were parking in home parking lots in a way that they can drive out and launch a missile toward a civilian population in Israel. So this is making Israel's operations in Lebanon far more complicated, but also would accelerate the departure of civilian population from South Lebanon far north into the country.
And these munitions, we're not talking about a few rifles here. We're in some cases talking about cruise missiles that can reach hundreds of kilometers, heavy rockets. I mean, this is some sophisticated weaponry that is being hidden in civilian homes.
Absolutely. Hezbollah has actually equipped itself with advanced weaponry provided by Iran, as well as provided some extent of self production capabilities. We saw that with cruise missiles that, according to videos, exploded and launched themselves into nearby facilities, nearby homes. We see how Hezbollah has accumulated, according to estimates, over 150,000 missiles, rockets, and drones, including, by the way, Shahed 136 drones and Ababil drones provided by Iran, used by Russia in its war in Ukraine. So we see how in both battlefields, both in Ukraine and Israel, these Iranian drones are used against civilian population, and advanced, in some cases, long-range missiles are stored right within civilian population, by the way, including in Beirut itself and the countryside of Lebanon.
Whilst there is a level of sophistication in what they have, there is also, as we've seen in the last 24 hours, a degree of incompetence in the same way that we saw with Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza. Rockets fall short. There's a video today of a rocket completely misfiring by Hezbollah.
Absolutely, and to be honest, Israel is now not only entering a new phase of this war, but also a new phase of warfare altogether. I mean, what we saw in the 1990s, for example, the American shock and awe strategy against its battlefields, including in Iraq, by the way. We know that in the first Gulf War, you had American weapons who are within several hundred meters of the target, really inflicting heavy damages, while Israel has been showing quite sophistication, not only eliminating Hezbollah officials by targeting the exact floor in which the senior militant was staying while the building remains intact, but also chose to redefine warfare, in my opinion, by discombobulating enemy command and control structure. We saw how the pager and walkie-talkie operation really did manage to throw Hezbollah out of its balance and neutralizing thousands of militants who are critical for the firepower of Hezbollah, eliminating a whole host of Hezbollah military officials and targeting over 1,600 with over 1,600 targets with airstrikes within the course of 24 hours. I think this whole throws Hezbollah into disarray, and certainly redefines the way Israel has been waging war against Lebanon and anywhere else over the past 20 years.
Is there a sense, simply by the fact that the geography is more advantageous in terms of intelligence, that Israel has been able to get more information on the ground about where terrorist infrastructure is than they can, let's say, in Gaza, where really they had to go in?
I think both in Lebanon and Gaza, the Israeli intelligence has accumulated what we call a target bank, where, needless to say, when a pilot departs on an operation, it is directed by extremely precise intelligence where the storage is. You have to remember not only to avoid civilian casualties, but also to really make good on the mission and strike targets and not nearby targets. And I think in Lebanon, the power bank, the I think in Lebanon, the target bank has been extremely rich for 2 decades. Israel has been collected tirelessly targets in Lebanon where missiles are stored, where senior militants tend to hang out, where military training bases are. But then in Gaza, I think the collection was quite different. I believe human intelligence capabilities in Lebanon were far richer and more advantageous than in Gaza. And I also think that Israel has been preparing more extensively for a war in Lebanon in a way that it hasn't quite prepared for a war in Gaza. Let's remember Gaza is a shore area, coastal area, sea level. And by contrast, Lebanon is extremely mountainous. It's far more difficult to operate in those dense forestry areas and mountainous areas. And I also think Israel got ready for war in Lebanon in a way it did not in Gaza. I think the Gaza sort of habit of warfare with Israel was limited operations, striking enemy capabilities in a way that would force a ceasefire until the next round. And in Lebanon, I think Israel really did get prepared with a whole host of target bank and getting ready to eliminate much of Hezbollah's capabilities. There was, of course, rich intelligence on Hamas and Hezbollah, but the preparation was different in both cases, and that's why we see the difference.
How hugely do you think Hezbollah has been impacted by the pager attack, the walkie-talkie attack, the fact that their senior commanders were forced to meet in person, and then you have the aerial bombardment? Do you think in some ways the IDF has been surprised by the level of success they've had so far?
Yeah, I think Hezbollah was extremely surprised to see Israel's level of success in its penetration into its ranks, its very rich target bank, the level of intelligence that really had pinpointed the exact location of senior military officials and where exactly weapons are being stored. We saw the side explosions after warehouses were targeted. Really, for long, several minutes there, rockets have been. There were many explosions over there, and rockets have been flying out of warehouses that were targeted. So all these things really show us that Israel has a very deep penetration level in Lebanon. It has a very deep intelligence into the Hezbollah ranks. And now it puts Hezbollah in a dilemma. I also think Iran is looking at this and quite astonished by Israel's level of success. And that, in my opinion, also impacts impacts Iran's decision on whether or not to go and enter this war and to come into for Hezbollah's rescue. And I do think that we'll see the implications of this extremely sophisticated warfare in the coming days.
How do you think the defense systems such as the Iron Dome are coping? Because we do know that Hezbollah's capabilities are superior to that of Hamas.
Absolutely. Hezbollah is a whole different ballgame than Hamas and its rocket capabilities. Hezbollah possesses long-range missiles that can cover the entire area of Israel, according to estimates over 150,000 missiles, rockets, and drones. And I think the idea is that Hezbollah really does pose a significant threat to the Israeli home front. While Israel has been expecting thousands of missiles per day from on Hezbollah's part. Over the past 24 hours, some 400 missiles and rockets were shot at Israel. So this is far lower than expected, but we should always remember to be on the alert. I do think that Hezbollah is either incapable or choosing not to launch these rockets. So we could very well see some sort of expansion of the scale of rockets fired on Hezbollah's part in the coming days. So it's important to remember to be on the guard, continue to bomb these warehouses and storage places of missiles and rockets, thereby preventing Hezbollah from launching them on Israeli cities and civilians, and keep putting pressure on Hezbollah and on Iran so that the threat on the Israeli home front ceases.
Can Israel get the job done without without sending in a ground force?
I do think that Israel has chosen so far to avoid ground operation. No war, to my knowledge, has ever been won by only using the Air Force, and so I do think that some sort of different dimensions other than Air Force would be required here. We saw the famous pager and beeper operation over there. So cyber warfare, psyops, and other sophisticated means, except Air Force targeting Hezbollah targets. And I do think that it's a major consideration facing Israel, the Israeli cabinet right now, whether or not to carry out a ground invasion into Lebanon. I remind you that Israel has already been creating this buffer zone in Lebanon for 19 years. And I do think that prior to doing that, we'll have to seriously consider the to what extent, what is the expected goal of this operation? What is the end result? What is the end game of this war with Hezbollah? Because Hezbollah started this war on October 8th. Israel did not want it. It wasn't interested in it. And now it was imposed on it. And the goal right now is to push Hezbollah away from the Litani River, away from the Israeli border, and to prevent a scenario of wholesale ground invasion of Hezbollah into northern Israel, much like the Hamas October 7 massacre, into southern Israel, but also the extremely disturbing anti-tank missiles that are directed at Israeli homes and cities from within a shooting range. All these things have to be implemented. The UN has to implement 1701, but also 1559 to dismantle Hezbollah and to prevent it from ever walking into southern Lebanon.
And of course, as this goes on, we move closer to the anniversary of October the 7th. I see you're wearing your pin to recognize the fact that there's still a lot of hostages being held by Hamas and other groups in Gaza. Has this part of the story been forgotten a little bit in the last couple of weeks? And how do you see that playing out as we get nearer to the anniversary?
It's unbelievable that it's been almost a year now since the hostages have been taken so illegally and brutally by Hamas. 250 hostages, including foreigners from many other countries, including Americans and British and French hostages. I do think that, of course, the hostages issue has not been forgotten. And Israel has been working with the tools that it had. Several very successful operations to rescue hostages, several successful operations to rescue hostage bodies, very sadly, following a precision intelligence. And of course, the deal from November 2023, rescuing 110 hostages by means of the deal with Hamas. Right now, there are conflicting reports about Sinwar's whereabouts, and basically, even the Hamas leadership abroad has been, whatever is left of it, is waiting for Sinwar's approval to continue to the next moves. I remind you that a hostage could have been carried out 6 months ago, and Hamas refused. I think this cynical use of human lives has to stop, and Israel and the world must do everything they can in order to release all hostages, all 101 hostages from Gaza soon.